What is going on, everybody? Welcome, welcome. This is Lack of Lepers, also known as SCP-CRNP. Thanks for joining again tonight. This is our week nightly stream where I read yesterday's SCPs. I'm off on the weekends because that's the way it goes. So thanks for showing up. Feel free to comment your thoughts in the, comment section. And let's dive right in. Let's see what we are working with. Today is the 12th. So we are looking at the 11th. So it seems as though we have really just two. So let's get started. Let me put the correct banner up here. And wow, this is going to be 6437, SCP-6437. So right off the bat, once again, we're trying to train our eyes to not do this, but you can see that the rating is -6. So we may not get all the way through this. Once again, the SCP Wiki has about a 90% success and efficiency rate of deleting articles that deserve it. So let's start with the special containment procedures and see if we agree. Brian, take it away.
Special Containment Procedures, SCP-6437 is to be contained inside a soundproof titanium cube and constantly monitored via a non-audio camera inside of the cube. Size of the cube must not be smaller than 1 meter cubed. No personnel are to enter SCP-6437's containment under any circumstances. All testing must be approved by Dr. Herinet. 1. Any movement or change in behavior is to be reported to Dr. Herinet and Rapid Response Task Force Omicron-11, aka Burke's Boys, is to be put on alert until 24 hours following behavior.
Right. I love the tradition at SAP of naming the mobile task forces and whatnot. Burke's Boys, I like it. Okay, so just one paragraph into the containment procedures, and we already have just an inescapably bumpy ride, particularly when it comes to clinical tone. I want you to notice how many times the word cube is mentioned. It's contained inside a cube, inside the cube, the size of the cube, 1 meter cubed. This would have been a great time to just do a superscript 3 in place of cube. We missed a footnote. This says no D-class personnel are permitted due to replication properties. So we're starting to get a little bit of idea of the anomaly just from that. But overall, the first paragraph is just peppered with problems and a little bit of a cliche. You know, there's that all testing must be approved sort of slash through that is just all too common. All right, next paragraph.
Any individuals who are removed from SCP-6437's audible range that are not classified as SCP-6437-1 or SCP-6437-2 are to have an immediate psychological and physiological evaluation. Any individuals classified as SCP-6437-1 or SCP-6437-2 are to be terminated immediately and incinerated.
Wow.
Any instances of SCP-6437-3 are to be destroyed and incinerated immediately.
So once again, we are continuing. We're missing. We're 0 for 2. The second paragraph has even more trite cliches with the murder of personnel. And it's, once again, still a very, very bumpy ride. You have basically the same phrase repeated here, and it's just slightly modified, barely. So, all right. We are 0 for 2. Keep going.
STF Omicron-59, Musical Anarchy, is a deaf task force that is to not leave Area 64 at any time. All on-site staff are to be subject to psychological testing weekly due to the cognitohazardability of SCP-6437. In the event of a containment breach, STF Omicron-59 is to recontain SCP-6437 into a separate non-damaged container via a pair of tongs, and to terminate all personnel on Area 64 with extreme prejudice for any suspicion of contact with SCP-6437. Any individual who comes into direct physical contact, regardless of a clothing barrier, is to be terminated immediately. In the event of recontainment failure from STF-59, the on-site nuclear warhead is to be detonated to execute any possible instances of SCP-6437-1 and SCP-6437-2. Rapid Response Task Force Omicron-11, aka Burke's Boys, is to be called under Priority A for immediate recontainment of SCP-6437.
Okay, so once again, just trying to point out the good things where I can. Musical Anarchy is a great name. It's a deaf task force. I've always thought that's pretty cool. I think we've seen those things before. I think actually I did one of those while I was on the SCP. And then area probably should be capitalized. I don't know. It seems as though as we go through these paragraphs, it's just regressive. The stakes are cheaply raised again by the appearance of a nuclear warhead, which is to be detonated. I don't know. This feels wrong. So
In the event that Rapid Response Task Force Omicron-11 does not succeed in recontainment, then a Code Black is initiated and an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario is in effect. In the event of an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario, all Foundation resources are to be deployed to Area 64. All previous personnel at Area 64 and any non-anomalous individuals are to be considered compromised and must be terminated upon contact. Following recontainment of SCP-6437 after a Code Black, all personnel below Level 4 clearance are to be given Class A amnestics.
okay. So once again, we're starting to kill people, and then we have a nuke, and now we have an end of the world scenario. So it just seems as though already, given the stakes are just so artificially being raised here, it's getting a little top heavy in terms of like effect and believability. It's really not working in the direction I think the author is wanting it to. And I don't think they do a very good job of teasing what the anomaly might be, coming up. I think we get that there's two sub designations and they're slightly humanoid or something like that. But yeah, I'm not sure what else we're going to learn about this. So let's just head to the description and see what we can find out about this nuke-worthy anomaly.
Description: SCP-6437 is a black third-generation iPod Nano that plays, redacted, on a continuous loop. The song can be heard up to 50 meters from SCP-6437's location. SCP-6437 appears to be aware of its...
Okay, so we have a redacted here, and it's later referred to as a song. So we've redacted a song, but I don't know what song could be redact worthy. I'm not sure. I assume it's a cognito hazard.
SCP-6437 appears to be aware of its surroundings, but does not appear to have complex sentience or intelligence. Individuals exposed to SCP-6437's music report to enjoy the song, even if they had not previously enjoyed it. Effects on the individual vary based on time exposed to SCP-6437, or if direct contact is made with SCP-6437.
Okay, not much there. I want to welcome, thank you, Harmony. What's up? Thanks for joining. Thanks for the boost there in the comment section and in the Discord server. All right, I'm not impressed by this one at all. So far, I think that the rating is probably accurate. So we'll go a little further. Let's see how long we can get through. It's not terribly long, so maybe we'll get to the end. I don't know. Yeah. By the way, text to speech has come a long way, and this is I've actually looked for the best, and I think this is the best. Stick around, and you'll see a whole cast of actors chilling. All right, let's get back to it.
SCP-6.
Oh, I don't like that guy. I want Brian back. Where's Brian?
SCP-6437 will try to breach containment by any means necessary. These include turning up the volume to approximately 5000 kHz to destroy material 2. Turning screen brightness to 5000 lumens to destroy any material directly in front of its screen. During the first 30 minutes of exposure, the individual retains all former physical characteristics of the individual, but will experience heightened psychological and physical attributes by exactly 50%, including awareness of surroundings, physical and psychological reflexes, strength, speed, intelligence. The individual also experiences subdued psychological responses including anxiety, fear, impulse control, hedonia.
So basically, this is an iPod Nano that turns you into a Mary Sue. So I don't know if we should get. I think this is on life support right now. Um, let's just see how long it takes to tip over. I think we're almost done here with this one. This might be a short night.
Individuals affected by SCP-6437 have subdued morals. Often the individual shows little to no negative reaction doing immoral actions. 3. During the time period, the individual starts to develop an emotional attachment to SCP-6437, often becoming aggressive to any individuals who threaten to remove SCP-6437 exposure from the individual.
Like the worst combination of anomalies. This is like someone who doesn't know how to cook and they just throw whatever they think next should go. No, it's not even that. It's just whatever next is in the fridge. They just throw it in. We've got a compulsion. Upon a compulsion, um, yikes.
All instances of SCP-6437-1 cannot be reverted back to their original selves, even when.
Even when, period. You see this. I think we're going to call it here. When you've got such a bad sentence that sort of sputters across the finish line and gives up breath before you're even through the end of the sentence. I think that's it for this one. There's no comments on it. Maybe it speaks for itself. I don't have a lot of faith in the rest of this. I don't think you can come back from here. So it's at -6. I think that's a good rating for this, and this is one that I think is accurate. So we're going to move on to the next one. This is 6519, and this one is a lot longer. And so this has been up for a day. It looks as though it's safe with a rating of +40. So up top here, we see a RNC Site 43. So now that we have, now that we're working in a canon, and of course that insinuates that there's probably, a likelihood that this is one of, a handful of authors. We have to do our full disclosure. So what is my relationship with Site 43 and the authors of that hub, the most common ones at least? Well, they don't know that I exist, which is good. But I am not a fan of Site 43. It features a lot of authors, in my opinion, who are really gung ho on Neo Lull Foundation. The new sort of trend that we've seen. And so you typically get a lot of just zaniness in Site 43. You typically get a lot of characters that the whole thing is very cartoonized. You get a lot of characters who are supposed to kind of be just really zany, unpredictable, impulsive. It's almost like the dialogue in Site 43 articles, in my opinion, should fit into a sitcom, from the 1990s or something like that. And it's just this awkward thing because it seems like it's begging for a laugh track, but of course never gets one. So anyway, my bias is here, but that's what you get for making a brand out of your canon. Same thing for authors who put their names up top. This unavoidably and immediately colors the experience when, in a more scientific fashion, akin to a double-blind study, I think we would rather not have that so that we can be blind to those biases. But having said that, let's get into it. So its containment class is pending. Its secondary class is ether. I have no clue what that means. And of course, as always, I just ignore the rest of the ACS. So we have a really nice image here of some antenna, some radio towers is what it looks like. Not too dissimilar from what we went over last time, 2 times ago, with that excellent article about the guide masked radio tower. And so the caption says suspected SCP-6519 vectors. So let us take a peek at this. I already see that the containment procedures are quite brief. So this is encouraging. Let's see what's up.
Special containment procedures. Witness testimony will be collected by the Spectrometry and Spectrometry section of Site 43 to attempt confirmation of SCP-6519's existence. No further effort will be expended on its containment at this time, as it poses no significant threat to the Veil.
We've got a footnote. Ether class anomalies are only attested in as yet unconfirmed eyewitness reports. On the one hand, I like that. That's really cool. Like ether, it's kind of in the ether, you know. But on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, it seems like they're jumping the gun. You would first want to confirm that it's an anomaly prior to making this, but that's okay. Let's go to the description.
Description: SCP-6519 is an alleged phenomenon wherein recently deceased individuals interfere with radio broadcasts by inserting unscheduled material. In all
Wow.
cases, persons responsible for supervising the affected broadcasts are incapable of recognizing that anything unusual has taken place,
Hmm.
either at the time or after the fact.
Hmm.
The inserted material is, in all cases, a single pre-existing commercial music track.
Huh.
The phenomenon is always witnessed by one or more live subjects engaged in the act of remembering the deceased individual, most commonly during funerary rituals.
Well, so I think this is very interesting. That's a really interesting anomaly. It's always creepy when you mesh the boundary between the dead and something like wave technology, which is kind of ethereal in its own right. There's really a motif being woven through this piece already, and it's really well done. I can already tell that this is not going to suffer from a lack of technical writing. The clinical tone is good. There's nothing in this that's elementary, and yeah, I'm already kind of worried though because it takes a really cool idea where recently deceased individuals interfere with radio casts, and but then it has a pre-existing single commercial music track. So I kind of feel the zaniness coming on, as is really the MO of Site 43. So let's figure it out. That's true.
Addendum 6519-1, Investigation. The SCP-6519 dossier was opened by Dr. Anastasios Metaxas, Chair of Spectrometry and Spectrometry, in 2020 after a chance conversation with Dr. Harold Blank.
Uh-oh. There it is. There it is. Um, we hit our second. Uh, we hit our second forward advertisement, forward author advertisement. So not only did we have the Site 43, but it's pretty clear, I think, who wrote this by now. And if not, that's even more concerning. So I'm going to assume that it is this individual here who has decided that their wiki.username username should be a self-insert. That's another thing that we see with Neolaw Foundation, with Site 43 particularly, and those authors who are adjacent to it. It's really one big author advertisement. This sort of this attempt to advertise oneself in a sort of pataphysical way. In some cases, that becoming explicit in the actual context. So, yeah, uh, this is what I was afraid of. I was just about to say the automatology, that is the naming of this individual, the doctor. Um, I can barely pronounce that. Would you like to say that again for me?
Dr. Anastasios Metaxas.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that we have a chair of spectrometry and spectrometry, I guess. Um, anyway, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, sounds like a Greek dictator. Yeah, it does. It does. kneel before Metaxas, a kind god. Anyways, so yeah, Harry Blank, Harold Blank, I guess, in the more formal interpretation in universe, is a self-insert of author Harry Blank, who I am absolutely no fan of, and who I think is the creator of the Site 43, actually. So that should tell you a little bit about how I feel about this author. So I'm sad to see a self-insert like this so blatant, so forward, and but we'll try to move on from that.
Dr. Blank had described a potentially supernatural, recurrent event which he himself had experienced, forming the template for all other manifestations since recorded. Dr. Metax has subsequently encountered scattered references to other post-mortem media interference in archival material, but was unable to engage in further research before his retirement. He passed the dossier to his successor, Dr. Polixeni Metaxas, who collected preliminary witness testimony from Site 43 personnel.
And then, even so, it's setting Dr. Harold Blank up as this individual whose word is taken to be sort of like a um, I don't know. It's like he mentioned it, and so they started a file on it. I don't know. All right, so then we get to this the first of many of these long sort of table configurated inserts here. Several of them actually, and I'm going to collapse these just so we can have a little more of a fidelitist read through. So let's get started. This looks. I don't like the way this looks. There's no sort of spacing in here, so I guess that's just the way that it has to be. Okay, so let us introduce what is going on here.
43net, Catalogue of SCP-6519 incidents, selected, unsorted racer notice, 4. Items in this 43net request will require security clearance confirmation to access beyond the existing requirements of this SCP database file. Subject, Dr. Harold R. Blank, Archives and Revision, Chair, Song, Spirit in the Sky, Norman Greenbaum, 1969.
Okay, so once again, you make yourself the chair. Goodness gracious, we took a wrong turn somewhere, gang. Um, self inserts seem to be back on the rise. I thought there was something that, like many things in the wiki, you know, we might move away from, but here we are.
Testimony, I have only the vaguest memory of the first occurrence. It might very well be that I'm remembering my mother talking about it later. I was sitting in the back of her van, and we were driving in my great-grandmother's funeral procession. You know, a little convoy following the hearse. To know if people do that anymore. Mom had the radio on, she always had the radio on, and this song came on straight away. Distant horns, otherworldly, like they were coming across a big black lake at night, and then this gospel rock thing kicks in. The upbeat take on death. One long assurance that the next life is a good one, and someone's gonna head on over there and put in a good word for you ahead of time. When it's your turn to go, there'll be a spot saved for you. Typical Christian boilerplate, but still a damn snappy song, and it never stops feeling like it knows more than it lets on, like it's in on some cosmic secret, like it's coming from a place other than just some one-hit wonder nobody's ever heard of. It made a big impact on my mom, that's for sure. To know if she really thought it was her grandma saying goodbye, but I can certainly understand her wanting to see it that way. She never got tired of telling that story. Especially when. Okay. My personal religious beliefs aren't, you understand, and as far as I know she was the same. But we were agreed that something spooky was going on here because it damn well happened again, years and years later. She was driving to the hospital, alone this time, just after my grandmother, her mother, died, radio on as always, and along comes Mr. Greenbaum again to tell her it's all right. She told me about it when she got home, and I believed her. Still do, because, well, fast forward another decade or so. I was driving home from the hospital, the day my mom. Yeah. I've had the bottom drop out of my stomach a lot, doing this job, but my heart doesn't usually leap into my throat at the same time. After all the weird shit I've seen, I still wasn't ready to hear those distant horns again, but I was goddamn glad when I did. Once I stopped sobbing, and had time to let it sink in. Takes a lot to make me cry, I'm thoroughly shit at it, and gospel rock is not my usual ticket. Nevertheless, I don't know if my mom's still out there somewhere, in some sense, but I'd obviously like to think it's the case. And I'd like to think that she's happy? So I'm biased. I want this to be real, and that makes me a less than reliable source. But you
Exactly.
know what we say in A&R, once is
Got a
odd,
problem.
twice is strange, three times is data. As far as I'm concerned, my great-grandmother and my grandmother and my mom all phoned home to let us know they're okay, from wherever it is that they went.
This is a great line. I'll give it. Once is odd, twice is strange, three times is data. I like that quite a lot. I was really worried in the first half of this that it would basically, this whole thing would just be an excuse for the author to share their current playlist and be a music commentator on all these. But I was happy to see a little bit of characterization come through here. Once again, I think the writing is competent. I think this is passable writing. It's there's nothing in here that's glaringly wrong from a technical standpoint. It's competent. The author clearly knows what they're doing. Um, I think there's a greater question here as to why you are still taking this so seriously. I mean, like I said, this is a great line. Once is odd, twice is strange, three times is data. But I still think at this point our threshold for defining what an anomaly is should be pretty high, and it looks as though basically, three times somebody heard a song that made them think of their deceased ones at this point. So maybe that'll be built upon. Let's finish this one out.
Dr. Blank is a prime example of what I call accumulation, the tendency for individuals encountering anomalous phenomena in their early life to continue to experience them as time progresses. It was this characteristic which convinced my predecessor that there might be something deeper to the story. For what it's worth, I think he was right. Metaxas, Dr. P.
I like this word too, eso accumulation. Esoteric, I suppose, and then you just portmanteau it with accumulation. So I think that's very clever. That's a nice little word there. But once again, this we haven't really been given anything more to bite onto than just the word of the Almighty Doctor and Chair Harold R. Blank. All right, so now we're at the next little bit. This is a different doctor who works for the Applied Occultism, who is also the chair. So I wonder if we have to take their word for it equally on faith, it seems. And the song, who cares what the song is? Let's get to the testimony.
Testimony, I lost someone close to me in the 2002 containment breach. It took a lot out of me. Everything I had. I remember thinking, at the time, that this was my big chance at happiness completely blown. He ticked off all the boxes for me, and the idea of all the effort required to find someone like that again, it just completely exhausted me. I slept for days. I avoided all my friends. I fell way behind on my work. Completely drained. And then, one night, while I was moping, I turned on the radio just to occupy my mind. I used to crank it up real loud, drown out the yeah. And this track comes on, almost right away, a sort of weird cloud of guitars and finger snapping resolving into this halting sing-song, and an awkward harmony, tentative but heartfelt, and I let it play.
I will say the author, who once again I have a sneaking suspicion of who this is, but the author they have some pretty impressive things to say about music analysis. I loved some of those images and the way that was described. Very good job.
It resonated, it was. Like the music itself was working through something, the way I was working through something, and maybe we could figure out how to do it together. It was imperfect, but maybe that was the point. The perfect is the enemy of the good. And that's just the music, as for the words. Well, that was a message. It just simply had to be. It doesn't matter how bad the situation is, you can still make the best out of it. Keep trying. Put yourself out there. Try. Don't give up on good because you lost something great. There's second chances in every direction, lined up and waiting for you, so all you have to do is move. So I moved, and you know what? There was something to it. I've kept moving ever since.
Okay, so the first one, the first half, made me feel like this was once again the author's way to sneak in their own playlist into an article, and I thought that that might be fixed, but it's back. This thing was one big music analysis, an exercise, an assignment you would turn in the music listening class. Not that it's bad, but that's just what it is. And still, we're only at the point. This hasn't risen to anomaly yet. Not even close. We're really at the point of, just the most pedestrian and mundane of religious thinking, where you believe that, you know, the shape of the clouds was a message from God, and really the only anomalous thing that we've seen. Actually, nothing is anomalous. It's just that what they think is anomalous is essentially feeling better and being convinced that they're receiving messages from somewhere beyond this plane. So there's a lot of self-assured, non-scientific approach style thinking going on here with regards to this anomaly. And that is certainly what is bothering me most about this so far.
One of the very few examples we have where the event is far removed from the individual's death. It might be an outlier, or it might be unrelated. In any event, the subject believes it's related, and we're not yet at the point where we can discard any potential interpretation.
I mean, you're basically,
Metaxas, Dr. P.
yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there, Brian. Yeah, so you're basically anomalizing the self-fulfilling prophecy at this point, and it's not working yet. So let's just keep going, because apparently this is a great article. I mean, it's 40 in a day, right? So if we go by the rating, this should be getting good at any time now. All right, so the next one you have to put some credentials into, and what do you know? They're confirmed and accepted. What luck! The next one is a theology and teleology. I believe teleology is the study of purpose when it comes to a deity. Let's see, teleology. Yeah, yeah, purpose they serve. Okay, so that's interesting. Another chair. All these people are high up. Have you noticed this? A chair, a hairy chair. There. So I feel like Dr. Seuss. This one's a lot shorter, so it's another song. I think all of these have been from kind of the 70s ish. I guess we're just tracing along with time here. The more examples we get.
Testimony, doing this under protest. I recognize the parallels in the song. She hears a warning that we can't hear, because we're far below and she's left us for the skies. She has perspective that we don't have, she can see the big picture, she can see the change that's coming, and she thinks we need to. What? Help people. Help ourselves. Yes, it's the kind of thing she might want us to hear, but Brenda Corbin isn't dead, so this wasn't her.
Okay, well that's interesting. Little variation here.
She had a terminal brain tumor and a Babylonian god dragon took her into the clouds, Michael. Metaxas, Dr. P, and they've been cited since. Nas, Dr. M, I'm not saying she's dead now, necessarily. I'm saying she was dead once. Metaxas, Dr. P.
Okay. It's a little confusing. I think obviously this is a cross link, so I hope you don't have to rely on that too much to quite understand what's happening here. You can read between the lines, obviously, with that phrase right there. Um, yeah, that didn't really do too much for me. Basically, we have someone who doesn't want to believe that it's true, and once again, we're still sort of pivoting on just the flimsy ground of self-assured belief at this point, and we're almost halfway through the article here. So we have another director who has submitted some testimony, and another song. And I think actually every of these songs, oh no, you probably noticed this before I did. You were very kind to not say anything. But every single one of these songs is a link to YouTube. Yeah. So there's an advertisement that I don't want to play. So basically, this is the author's playlist. This is an excuse to put the author's playlist into an article. Okay. Well, let's keep pretending like it's an SCP article and read this testimony.
Testimony: the band is English, as am I, as was my mother. I never returned to England until she was on her deathbed, which I thought had made the maintenance of my cover story simpler. To my surprise, she had largely guessed at the facts of the matter in my absence. There seemed little point in dissimulating, given her condition, so I confirmed them to her in her final moments. Nothing against protocol, you understand. What I told her certainly informed the lyrical intervention which followed, although I will note that there seemed to be details which I did not pass along, suggesting that the dead enjoy a certain expanded clarity or even omniscience which may prove problematic for maintenance of the veil. In any event, the lyrics to the Land of Make-Believe are addressed to dwellers in a realm of fantasy who are unwilling to acknowledge that fact about themselves, underscoring the potential for them to nevertheless overcome their personal difficulties to find happiness.
Yeah, so this is getting a little interesting because we have this working on a couple of different layers. The Land of Make Believe, obviously, being a very intentional choice for the song selection here, and that really describes very well what we're seeing so far, and even almost absolves the criticism that I've been making so far. It addresses dwellers in a realm of fantasy. That really who are unwilling to acknowledge this fact about themselves. That really explains every testimony that we've seen so far. And then, of course, the idea is that there's potential for them to nevertheless overcome their personal difficulties. But once again, this literally is the self-fulfilling prophecy. That's really the reason why you would move on from nihilism to something else, whether it be absurdism or a reinterpretation of some sort of theism or deism, is because the vacuum which nature abhors at least provides you the opportunity to fill it with more meaning, particularly if you're a creative individual. So, um, but that's not anomalous, that's literally just goes only so far as the individual's psychology. So once again, at this point, I would be asking if a bunch of people in high positions at the SCP suddenly felt as though God was speaking to them in their bowl of alphabet soup, would they be justified in making a article about it and putting a bunch of resources to it? I don't know. I don't think so.
This fantasy land supposedly occupies an unwarranted amount of space, likely in this context a coded reference to our facility's location beneath indigenous land, one of the details I did not share, and perhaps even the Foundation's ever-growing net around the anomalous world. The concept of organizational secrecy is broached, in nearly direct allusion to the concept of living in the dark so that others might die in the light, and
Hmm.
the singer rejects this wholeheartedly. Optimism is expressed that the fantasy dwellers will nurture hope in their hearts, express it to the universe, and see it flower. They are further exhorted to open their locks and shutters and let the light in, breaking down the boundary between fantasy and reality to create a world where there are no more secrets. Engaging in this process will allow the subject of the song, myself, presumably, to ascend. Finally, the singer demands that his audience take this message to the wider world, and surrender to universal love. The overall suggestion is, obviously, the end of consensus normalcy. I'm personally unimpressed with the song's utility for this particular allegory. It's too direct a metaphor, which detracts considerably from conceptual ambiguity of the original message.
So that was really, really good. I really liked this. The individual who's writing this is obviously a very intelligent person who thinks very deeply about things. But once again, this has delved even deeper into the land of pure, musical commentary. I don't really understand how this has anything at all to do with this developing theme. Um, but yeah, we have some comments here. Dr. Blank has chimed in. I guess this is like a cool kids club where they're all reinforcing their beliefs together. Um, Sort of like a church, I guess. Doctor of Communication, everyone, Dr. Blank says. Please don't make contentless comments, Dr. Blank. And this is sort of a parody of staff and their rules, um, you know, which, haha, I guess. a doctorate in communication, which is simply termed a PhD, as you well know, Dr. McInnes. So I will say this: at this point, we're about a third of the way, maybe a half of the way through this, and I think that so far we're avoiding the typical pitfalls of Site 43 pretty well. I don't think this has really risen to the level of being impressive, other than this is clearly a competent writer on the whole. But aside from that, that's about where its good qualities end as of this point. So let's keep moving on. We have another high-ranking individual, and this is the administration and oversight. We have another song that the author wants us to listen and let us know that they like it. I'm sure we'll get some analysis.
Testimony: there was heavy traffic outside the church during my stepfather's funeral. It was hot, the doors were open wide, and instead of honking horns or catcalls, all we could hear was a stopped car blasting this song on the radio. Louder than the eulogies.
Ha!
That guitar was like pure sunlight in the gloom, clear as a bell. I suppose their windows were rolled
I
down.
suppose. You never
No air
know.
conditioning. The song seemed kind of impossible, because I recognized a lot of famous voices in there all at once, like a band that couldn't exist in the real world, Dylan and Roy Orbison and at least one Beatle. That's one reason I remember it. The other reason is that when the first car finally got its green light and headed off, another one pulled up that was tuned to the same station.
Yeah. So this is clever writing. Let's give it what it earns. I mean, this is a very clever way to introduce these situations of loss and music, sort of blending together. So yeah, I mean, so far there's really nothing like I said. There's nothing technical that I can really say bad about this so far. Our wonderful Greek dictator Metaxas says, "End of the line is about accepting the things you can't control, living your life according to a set of values and ideals, expressing strength of character, and giving yourself over to love." And then Elstrom, who this testimony is from, says, "The melody is pleasant." Yeah, so once again, we're really sort of almost at risk of dipping into the realm of like pseudo, I guess I'd say pseudo intelligence, pseudo intellectualism. And what I mean by that is, when you have things like this really reminds one of like a creative writing class or like a literature class where the teacher asks people, or you have to write an essay about what does this song mean? What are the themes in this? And it's so up in the air, so subjective. I'm still quite shocked that this is a article that they're believing that an anomaly is built on the back of. But let's keep going. So now we have more credentials. I think these are higher credentials. Very, very strange that you would put these behind credentials when they're essentially just musical commentaries. So this is Ibanez, which I wonder if the author is aware that this is a shout out to the name of a guitar manufacturer, Ibanez bass guitars, I think. Just given their musicality. All right, let's see what they have to say.
Testimony: we lost. I lost Udo Okori in Alagarda during SCP-6500. Deader than dead. She was facing down the fucking Hanged King in Hell City itself. There was literally not one single way she could have survived. She gave herself up to save us, not just her friends, but everyone, everywhere. And you know what? I was not fucking having it. I don't know if it was faith in her, beyond all reason, or just mule-headed stubbornness, but I refused to sign the fucking forms or go to the fucking funeral or talk to her fucking parents, at least not until I had an action plan in mind. I went to a memorial service in Nipperwash Park, under heavy protest, to show the flag, but it just pissed me right the fuck off. I wasn't letting go. I went walkabout while everyone was telling sad and funny stories, getting used to the idea that she was gone in exactly the way that I was determined not to do. and I jammed my earbuds in and flicked through the local stations on my handheld. They were all playing Elton fucking John. All of them. Every single station belting out the clearest "your friend isn't dead" signal I could have possibly asked for. That was the last straw. A few days later I was back in Alagada, and the day after that we had our applied occultist back.
Okay. Once again, so we got a lot of leaning on a cross link here, and of course, this is an SCP that I really really don't like, SCP-6500. So I kind of can get what's happening here. Um, I I once again don't quite understand how this is anomalous. I'm not seeing it. Maybe I need to read this a few times. My reading comprehension on the first go around is not great, I'll admit, but I cannot see it. I cannot see it.
I've been chatting with theology and teleology about this one. Dr. Okori had escaped to the afterlife known as Korbenik at the time Chief Ibanez heard the song. Is it possible that she was, in a spiritual sense, deceased, by virtue of occupying space there? That her spirit was contacting the physical realm in a way her conscious mind and body couldn't detect? She certainly has no memory of sending Chief Ibanez an Elton John song. Metaxas, Dr. P.
Okay, and Dr. Orkori says, but if I was going to, I'd choose that one for sure. It's a banger. So once again, it's lines like this that make me think the real ulterior motive of this is to flaunt someone's musical preferences and tastes. Speaking of that, doctor, that's the next one, and again, a chair of applied occultism. This is a Rod Stewart song, and we're getting into the late '80s here. So let's hear what this testimony has to say.
Testimony, who even listens to the radio anymore? But Harry told me about his mom, and I remembered the first time it happened to me, and I thought, well, it worked. I don't know if I can. I don't know. You've heard this song? Don't make me say the name, even then name, I just can't. You've? Yeah. Imagine if one of your parents. Yeah. He wanted me to know that he's proud. That he's still with me. That doesn't change. That's forever.
So I take it back. It's not like a bunch of people thinking that God is speaking to them through their alphabet soup. It's the people who gather in that studio audience, that live studio audience, where the medium is telling them that their family is trying to say things to them, like speak to them from beyond the grave. What's that guy's name? I can't remember the dude's name who got real famous doing that, and has been thoroughly debunked. But that's really what this is. And once again, I think it's great writing. It's fantastic writing, clearly advanced level of approach to, I think, the ideas going on here. And once again, great musical analysis. But I cannot see at all still how in the world this is anomalous. So we've got another chief. What's up with this? What's up with these high-ranking chiefs and chairs? Is this a cool kids club? Achromatic abatement, which I don't care to look into. We're going all the way back to 1939. Wow, these are like the beginnings of rock music. So we're dipping into um, before the snare on the 2 and the 4 was really a thing that had been invented yet. Let's see what this says.
Testimony. Song sounds like it's filtering up through the water from a sinking ship, doesn't it?
I mean, that's
Like
great. That is just a great way to describe a song. I mean, very abstract thinking there. The author really is very good at picking thoughts out of the abstract realm and giving them impressive sentence structures. Good job.
the band on Titanic is playing it. Eerie, good choice for ghost music. That's not what I was thinking at the time, though. Vivian had finally died, at the sprightly old age of much younger than I am right now, and I couldn't go to the funeral because of my condition. They had a radio set up so I could listen to the service. When the broadcast ended, and this is the strange part, because it was an internal Foundation broadcast, they played "We'll Meet Again." Viv and I worked together during the war, of course. So we heard that song a lot. He even saw Vera Lynn sing it to the troops once, while he was clearing out an archive in Bengal before the Japanese came through. So yeah, it was his kind of music, of the moment, and historically significant. It wasn't our song, though, not that we. It was never particularly special to the both of us, together. Just one milestone on two long trips. So if there's a reason he saw fit to reach beyond the pale and drop it in my lap again, I
Mm.
can't imagine what it was.
Mm.
To be sure, there's the whole optimism in the face of adversity, hope for tomorrow message, the
Man.
sort of thing that might appeal to, for example, a woman trapped in an incinerator for endless decades, but
Mm-hmm.
that seems too superficial for Viv. And the
Viv.
more direct route is no good either, because I'm not so sure he and I will meet again. I haven't aged since 1944, so natural causes are probably out of the question.
Yeah, so there's apparently like this social media structure set up where people can like share their testimonies and then people leave comments. I wonder if we're not seeing it just because it's been translated to in universe, but I wonder if there's like a plus, you know, like thumbs up kind of thing. So we are getting to even higher clearance levels, and yeah, once again, this is just a really uneven field between this escalation that's being attempted by this increasing demand for clearance levels and the actual anomaly still not moving at all. It's still as deflated as it ever has been. We're once again just getting testimony over, and testimony is a good word for it. You know, it's entirely subjective. Um, I don't know if I don't think that the collective subjectivity um, really really is sufficient justification here. I think once again, going back to that really good line about three times being data, I think the entirety of the article is being linchpinned to that sentiment, maybe disingenuously, because if I was writing this, there's no way I would think that that phrase, as nice and as pretty as it is, could really get us all the way to clearance level 4 testimony about the current playlist on your smartphone. All right, so once again, another chair. This is Dr. Lillian S. Lilyhammer, memetics and counter-memetics. And I'm getting real tired of these testimonies. I wish something would happen. It feels as though we're just stuck. So far, this is really not an entertaining read. I mean, once again, the writing is good, but this is a real drag to get through so far, in my opinion.
Testimony, it was just after Eric Hoyle died. He and I weren't at 43 together for all that long, by local standards, but he taught me more than. Well, you know me. Self-taught, mostly. Anybody who can get a few lessons in edgewise with me is a damn good teacher, and I respected that. I was sorry to see him go, even though he was already practically a fossil. Second best memeticist we had at the time, in my humble opinion. Assuming this was supernatural, and I'll grant you that one, I'm not like everyone else, I don't laugh at you behind your back, Polly, and
Right.
assuming it was Eric who picked the song, and it was Eric, because this is me assuming, well, it was an odd song choice. He knew damn well that I don't like the Eagles. But somehow it didn't matter. I hadn't heard this song before, or if I had, I'd forgotten it. Forgettable ass band, the Eagles. But it definitely helped. With, you know. It helped. The sentiments were saccharine as fuck, but every once in a while it's nice to hear someone say, hey, you, I hope it works out. I hope you can make it work out.
I really hope this becomes more than just a very, very long, very drawn out, very sleepy hug that the author is trying to give here in an emotional package.
That's my sort of message, even if it is paired with elevator music. I'm all about forcing things not to suck, and people backing me up on that. I thought that was why it resonated with me, but man, I guess I should have known better. Ran a semio-acoustic battery on the waveform, just out of habit, and wouldn't you know it? The old bastard managed what looks for all the world like a Euler Lilyhammer memetic acceptance agent from beyond the grave. That's why I sat through a whole goddamn Eagles song. You'd think he could have picked something I actually like. But, then, maybe that was the joke. He did have a good sense of humor, for an old fart. I still miss him a little bit, now and then.
Hmm.
The fact that there was an associated mimetic effect makes this case particularly useful, proving that this anomaly is actually an anomaly.
So I think at this point the author has maybe they've gotten a little self-conscious in the composition of this because we're a little over halfway through, and we're just now getting to the point. Once again, we're in level 4 credentials, and we're just now getting to the point where we're actually approaching the idea of is this actually an anomaly? And what's the problem with this attempt here, which doesn't so much as sputter across the finish line, but I don't actually ever gets off the ground here again, is that if the if the evidence is a meme and that meme is in a song, aren't songs kind of mimetic? Aren't pop songs, certainly the Eagles writing in 1975, isn't that sort of like pure mimetics? Isn't that really what pop music song structure is? Once again, it seems as though I think this actually would be better if these weren't chairs and chiefs of staff, if these were junior researchers, because it seems as though people of this repute would have a little better of an ability to temper and have some self-awareness with regards to their own epistemology and the justifications of these things. I think a mimetic effect is probably the weakest way you could have begun to justify this as an actual anomaly. So I am not convinced, and yeah, I mean, once again, this is not bad writing, but it's like watching a pretty person just sit there. It's a very sleepy article with not a lot going on so far.
And not just wishful thinking. It's also interesting that Dr. Royler would do a thing like that on the commercial airwaves, even taking into account the relief from responsibilities one encounters with one's death. His parting message wished peace on, at best estimate, around 40,000 people. I never met the man, but having read some of his work, I have my suspicions that this side effect was not at all unintentional. Metaxas, Dr. P.
Okay. Dr. P also says, on reflection, if a deceased mimeticist can produce mimetic effects via this anomaly, what might a traditional thaumaturge do? And then another doctor, Solosky, whose profile picture we can't see and whose karma we can't see. That's a shame. I know everybody's waiting for me to comment, so I'll get it out of the way. No, the Emergent Threat Tactical Response Authority is not presently considering weaponization of the maybe bogus, poignant ghost songs. So that's perfectly phrased. Maybe bogus, poignant ghost songs. That's my criticism in a nutshell. And it's just very ironic that the author has supplied this to me. It's almost as though there's something sort of there's a dissonance in the compositional mind that is again not too secure in that this is actually an anomaly. I'm really hoping by the end we actually have a better justification. And then Dr. Harry Blank comes along to give us our first true Site 43 Neo Law Foundation line of dialogue that says, like you'd fucking tell us, Dr. Blank, who is just so hilariously irreverent that we can't help but listen for the laugh track. Oh, I didn't hear one after all. The next testimony is from Dr. Trevor Bremmel. This person's not a chair or a chief, so I don't know what they're doing here. Certainly in the credentials of level 4 collapsible, but maybe this one's really, really interesting. Maybe this is where, in looking at the stew on the furnace that never boils, as we're doing now, maybe we'll start to see some bubbles in this one.
Testimony, I don't like country music. I really don't like pop country music. But the only thing I've ever liked less is interacting with other people. I had that in
Jesus.
common with my dad, just about the only thing we had in common, minus the gadgets. He had his, I had mine, and never the twain should meet. I don't know if either of us ever stopped tinkering long enough to reflect on that. But I didn't have a choice when he died. At my age, they force you to take a week when you're bereaved. Well, I spent that week walking around the site, because what the hell else did I have? Stupid question, but I honestly couldn't think of anything else I should be doing. Until I heard this song coming from my assistant's office, just after the funeral. Everything there in black and white, you never get those chances back. Every minute you waste, as a child, avoiding your parents, it's gone forever. There's a reprise when you have your own kids, and you get to decide, screw it up again, or be the change? I decided to be the change. Fired what's his name, and gave Joanna his job the same day.
Yeah. So nope, nothing there. Once again, I'm looking for something. A bubble, please. Anything.
Ghost convinced me to fire you.
Let's read the. Sorry to interrupt you, Brian. Let's read the comment section for this
A
post.
ghost convinced me to fire you is one of the more interesting things I've seen on a termination form. Metaxas, Dr. P, really? It's not even one of the more interesting reasons Dr. Bremel specifically has fired someone. Elstrom, Dr. K, stolen
Okay.
moments isn't pop country, you heartless Philistine.
So we're
Blank,
getting.
Dr. H.
Yeah, we're getting very. This is really regressive. It's regressing into sort of the expected qualities of Neo Lull Foundation, particularly the dialogue, where we have it's just like a conga line of zaniness with these Dr. Blank comments, and now this whole comment section really is kind of uh, now also singing along. Um, okay, so this one we don't have to get Brian to read. Brian, you can take it easy. Take a sip of something if you'd like.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. So this one is Dr. I'm not going to pronounce that one. Actually, Brian, could you put the drink down for a second? I got a name for you to pronounce.
Fuck it all.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Achterberg.
Achterberg, thank you. Dr. Achterberg, Archives and Revision. And then this one is thankfully very short, and it says, you had to know my wife's sense of humor. So thank you to Dr.
Achterberg
for saving us a paragraph of nothing, which is, I'm afraid, what we're going to read again. But once again, it's almost like the author has decided just to give up. There's no build up here anymore. I think just epistemologically, we're getting much of the same. And so now we're at clearance level 5. And let's see. Make sure that yep. Okay. Oops, I accidentally clicked on. God dang, dude. This is why you don't put links to your playlist. That's really what YouTube has become, really, I think, is basically a glorified jukebox. Okay, so let's confirm our credentials and listen to what the chair, we're back to the chairs. I wonder if this is a typo, that Dr. Brimmel should be a chair, and we just forgot to put it in there. So this is the chair of psychology and parapsychology. And we have a bunch of songs in here. Let It Be, Don't Fear the Reaper. It must be pretty easy to pull songs about loss, and death and emotions that are associated with that. If you're the author of this article, the Great Gig in the Sky is quite an obvious one. All things must pass. So let's see what's cooking.
Testimony, if it had been just one song, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Spotify is just like Spotify, only behind about
Oh my
100 different
gosh! Wait! Back up. Hold on a second. What the fuck did I just hear?
Spotify. Spotify.
Yeah. So my general complaint with this author, it's almost like somebody who you see who is got everything to do something really good, and they decide that they want to take it in just like the worst direction ever. Um, it's almost as if whoever's writing this has a lot of depth, a lot of skill, a lot of talent, but is satisfied to take it all to the compositional level of a high school intelligence. So I hate that I have now had to recognize that
SCP-Fi.
is a thing. So that's a bummer, but let's try to get through this. At this point, I think unless it gets really, really good at the end, this rating of 39 is entirely asymmetric to the quality of this article. I think that it's probably the brand name recognition, maybe the image. Once again, the initial premise of the anomaly was really, really good, but I think we're looking at an article that is benefiting from the current mimetic style of marketing and the typical asymmetry that we see being celebrated on the SCP Wiki between at least the rating, its reception, and actual compositional skill. All right, so let's pick it up after the word Skipify, after the store brand, the SCP store brand of Skipify, because I really don't want to hear that word again at all. Throw up a 1 if you think this is a good article so far. Throw up a 2 if you think it's bad. Um, I certainly am trying my hardest to like this for the sake of you guys. All right, so let's find where we left off. It looks as though Brian took my suggestion seriously and is now unavailable, getting a glass of water or something like that, maybe using the restroom. So I'll read this. If it had just been one song, I wouldn't have thought anything of it. Ugh, is just like Spotify, only behind about 100 different cognito-hazard filters, so a few weird songs in a row I'd typically chalk up to random chance. But it wasn't just a few, it was 6, and they were absurdly pointed. I had to stop my paperwork and just think about what I was hearing. The messaging was consistent. Change is coming. It's bad, but you have to deal with it. You can't stop it. You can't undo or reverse it. You just have to, deal with it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't waste time second guessing it. Don't try to hang onto anything. Just be ready. And that last one, that's just an extended death wail. So, I submitted a report. Probably sounds like one of my patients, which is why I never heard a thing about it until this interview. You must be desperate for data, and I agree. I think when you're trying your hardest to justify this thing as an anomaly, that's kind of what we're seeing here is a bunch of desperate testimony. For example, I'm sorry that you heard 6 songs. I'm sorry that you subjectively thought that they were absurdly pointed, but we're supposed to be the foundation here, not a cool club playing in a sandbox that we've been given thanks to our credentials. All right. This is a quite a long testimony, quite a long comment given in the comment section here. So let's see if Brian is back to read this. Brian, what's up?
The Temporal Anomalies Department informs me that on the same day that Dr. NGO heard these songs, alternate timeline versions of Dr. Harold Blank, Chief Delfino Ibanez, Dr. Lillian Lilyhammer, Dear Alan McInnes, Chief Noe Nashimbeni, Dr. Udo Okori and Dr. William Wettle were all killed in a Cascade Materials handling disaster. There's apparently been some ontokinetic bleed between these realities this year. I'd wager the alternate Dr. NGO was meant to receive this package of sentiments to help steel her for the challenges ahead. Metaxas, Dr. P.
Okay. Interesting. The next comment is unfortunately, due to the nature of said bleed, the fact that our Dr. No received them means that the one who actually needed to didn't. 7 deaths, 6 songs. Any guesses which ghost couldn't be bothered? And everybody, in an effort that could be humorous if I knew a little more about these characters, I'll say this one guy. So, how many more of these do we need? I mean, given the fact that these testimonies aren't really pushing this along any, right? These testimonies aren't actually doing anything. They're just there for their own sake. We're not learning anything new. We're certainly not getting any more epistemological justification. And the only redeeming factor about this is that the author has sort of tipped the hat to this a few times. almost as if to be like, hey, whoa, I know I'm playing out of tune here, okay? Like, at least I'm aware of it. So that's really it. How much longer do we got here? Because I don't want to I don't want to sit here all night reading bad testimony after bad testimony. All right, so this is really the last testimony, so I think we can get through it again. Once again, we have a chief, um, and another song, another swing.
Testimony: I thought I was doing okay when my mother died. Not great, but okay. I had all the support in the world. I had counseling, I had my work. I thought I was handling it. Sure, I had the headaches, and the stomach cramps, and the fact that I couldn't sleep. But we were driving away from the funeral home when it finally really hit me, like a damn truck. Phil had the car radio on, and that song. That song is nuclear grade. I can't imagine why anyone would ever listen to it except to do what I did, which was bawl my eyes out on the side of the road. It
Mm-hmm.
actually started on the freeway, and you should have seen how fast Phil pulled over. Probably thought I was having a heart attack, which, not too far from the truth, really. But oh, God, how I needed that breakdown. If I'd stayed okay, I guess I never would have been well ever again. I needed the catharsis. It had to get worse to get better, and this was the gentlest way to make that happen. That song was like my mom talking right to me, telling me she knew I still needed her, telling me it was okay to break down, for a while. That I wasn't too old to cry like a baby. Even wherever she is now, she still wanted to help. God, it helps a lot, just knowing that.
One sympathizes, says Dr. Mataxis. Um, Once again, I'm sorry, but you haven't given us anything here. This is just another. I mean, they're really all sob stories, and I mean, depending on where you are in your life, obviously this will hit you in a different way. But just from a, um, just from a compositional standpoint, just from, in a way, a technical standpoint, the writing itself is technically gifted, but the composition, the architecture, the structure of this is just woefully dull. It is. It doesn't even seem to be trying. It's sort of limp wristed, and it's like trying to watch, um, someone who hasn't been, um, you know, hasn't exercised in a decade run a lap around the track. It's just not doing anything at all, and seems to be labored of breath when it comes to um, the anomaly itself, which is only faintly recalled. The idea that this is supposed to be an anomaly is barely recalled. It's only faintly nodded to at all in the whole article, and we're almost done. So here's an addendum, potential confirmation. So once again, we've been strung out, we've been reeled out this whole time with text that has zero capability to justify this as an anomaly. So we get to the end, and I'm assuming that the author is going to be masterful in the structure of this after all, and that the frustration that someone like me feels when trying to read this is going to be sort of judoed with my own momentum turned against me, and I will be wowed. I'll be floored when we get to the end and it is just definitively confirmed. So let's see what this interesting and promising addendum has to say.
Addendum 6519 to 2, potential confirmation. Dr. Anastasios Metaxas died of natural causes in 2022 and his successor, Dr. Polixini Metaxas, proposed exploiting this occurrence to take spectrometry readings of any resultant SCP-6519 event. Her personal vehicle was fitted with 15 separate high-sensitivity instruments before she embarked for the funeral, and researchers were dispatched to monitor local broadcast stations for anomalous activity. Audio transcription from Dr. Metaxas' vehicle is provided below, in lieu of a final report to be appended at a later date. Initial spectrometry data has been compiled and queued for analysis.
So basically, the individual who took over is now going to try to see if this is going to happen with her and her father, who passed away and who she took the position of. So we have officers of record, the individual we've already mentioned, all these department chairs and deputy chairs are really friendly. They really have their own little social clique, it seems. I wonder if that was a little subconscious projection on the part of the author or not. So once again, when we get to interviews, I like to kind of do something fun and invite the whole cast up here to help Brian. So why don't we do that? The part of Dr. Metaxas is going to be played by Emma, and Dr. Watana is going to be played by Kimberly. Okay, let's try it one more time.
You sure you're up to this, Polly?
Dr. Metaxas.
I'd have the radio on anyway, whether the anomaly was
Hold
official.
on. Sorry. Don't mean to tease you. So we have the log begins, non-anomalous music is playing, and there's a footnote based on waveform analysis, presently 82.5% complete. Non-anomalous music is defined as possessing spectrometry readings, Randy levels, no higher or lower than the background, a normalcy of baseline reality. So this kind of frustrates me even more and confuses me a little more because if you can tell whether or not music is anomalous or not, I mean, doesn't that sort of rub shoulders with a broadcast of music? Couldn't you be doing the same thing? Isn't this a more objective, or at least slightly more objective, potentially more objective way of figuring out whether or not this is an anomaly or not? I don't know. So, okay, let's try again.
You sure you're up to this, Polly?
Dr. Metaxas.
I'd have the radio on anyway, whether the anomaly was official or not. We might as well get the data.
Dr. Watana.
If there's any data to get. No offense.
Dr. Metaxas.
None taken. You're the designated cynic.
Let's
Dr.
go.
Watana.
Let's do it.
Don't get me wrong, this wouldn't make my top 10 weirdest ghost things if it turned out to be true. It's just.
Dr. Metaxas.
Go on.
Dr. Watana.
No, it's inappropriate.
Dr. Metaxas.
Continue, please, Dr. Watana.
Dr. Watana.
No fair breaking out the boss voice. Well, it's just all too pat and convenient, you know. Everyone who's had this allegedly happen to them has wanted it to happen to them.
Dr. Metaxas.
Yes.
It's hard to see a pattern when you're not looking for one, though.
Dr. Watana.
Conversely, it's easy to see a pattern that isn't there when you are looking for one. That's how our brains work, Polly. They're predisposed to pattern recognition, hyper-predisposed even.
Exactly.
I don't think we have enough data to suggest that this is anything but a pleasant coincidence. If it were real, I'd expect to see way more cases than we have.
Dr.
More?
Metaxas.
No.
The Euler
No.
incident didn't
Stop.
convince you?
Dr. Watana.
The affected station was occupied by VKTM for a month. That's the mimetic equivalent of cross-contamination, and you know it.
Dr. Metaxas.
The Okori incidents, then.
Dr. Watana.
I'm not
They've named
predisposed
them.
to trust any message supposedly coming out of Corbenic. Especially ones that make sense.
Dr. Metaxas sighs. Dr. Metaxas.
Maybe there's a ton of examples out there every day, but we never hear about them because most people are as skeptical as you.
Dr. Watana.
You and I both know that most people are gullible idiots. They'd eat this idea up. Again,
Exactly.
no offense.
Dr. Metaxas.
We want to believe.
Thank you.
Dr. Watana.
Yeah. Look, if the spectrometer picks up something big, and then we get the go-ahead to canvass the whole foundation, maybe we'll have something.
Why did you
Dr.
start with that?
Metaxas.
Adjust. Fuck.
Dr. Watana.
What?
Dr. Metaxas.
Secondary class, ether. That's what half our damn files say. People are starting to think that's just the standard class for ghost stuff, Molly. It would just be nice to get some proof once in a while.
Dr. Watana.
We get proof all the time. What about that barn ghost you saw?
Dr. Metaxas.
Women can't live on barn ghosts alone. And this one, well, you know, I'd like this one to be legit.
Okay, so I have to pause this for a second because I'm a little horrified. Because apparently, I hope this is just not true. I hope this is contained with just this article. But apparently, the secondary class ether is a common thing for. Is it this canon? Is it this department? Which I think is a subset of this canon. This is really terrifying because this is kind of this was kind of going to be my ultimate thing to say, and I have just a little more to be potentially proven wrong here. Um, but if what you don't want is to introduce the idea that you can write an article on the SCP Wiki, um, and have it be encouraged where it's not actually an anomaly, right? I think it's great to be um, innovative. It's great to be subversive in a lot of ways. This is so far the idea of it maybe being an anomaly, maybe not the whole way. Um, the whole way through the article. But at some point, you're going to break the concept. And so, the bottom line is that this is a real big gamble, and there's a lot riding on this gamble. And if the author can't hit this home run, if they can't send this through by the end, this will have been just an infuriating use of my time. So, not really, because I'm having fun doing this. So appreciate anybody who's watching. Um, and I love reading. I love reading containment fiction anyway. But um, yeah, the only hope that I have is that the the characters here are really, really encapsulating my side of this very, very well. So it's starting to make me a little nervous that the author is has me one upped and has me crystallized and really is inserting me into this character and sort of slyly leading me with a knowing and subtle hand. But I am relieved, at the least, to see the concerns that I have in an in-universe perspective um, somewhat vindicated and validated by this dialogue here. But also, it looks as though this line is problematic. If the spectrometer picks up something big, then we get the go ahead to canvass the whole Foundation. Maybe we'll have something. I mean, so if y'all were so convinced to get all of these testimonies from all these chiefs, how hard would it have been to get and directors and things like this, the chairs? Shouldn't you have done this before? Shouldn't you have done this first? It seems as though this is a more proofful way of doing that, but it kind of feels like a cheap trick to not have done that and to get to this point, and again, it be at the very end of the article. It seems as though the author is taking a little too indulgent of a liberty here for my tastes. Let's continue.
Dr. Matax says,
Women can't live on barn ghosts alone. And this one? Well, I'd like this one to be legit.
Song continues, Dr. Matax says.
For him.
Dr. Watana sighs, Dr. Matax says.
Doesn't look like you've got it all off your chest, Molly.
Dr. Watana.
I don't want to.
Dr. Matax says.
Just spit it out.
Dr. Watana.
Well, there's also the tonal discrepancy.
Dr. Matax says.
Something technical?
Dr. Watana, no, sorry, what I mean is.
Haha.
Okay. Not a single one of the recorded cases features a spiritual intervention to play something angry or accusatory on the radio. Nothing sexual, even. It's always uplifting stuff, cathartic or cautionary at the worst. What if we're just seeing what we want to? What if these people are hearing what they want to,
Let's
and
go.
not hearing what they don't?
Come on.
And it only looks like a pattern because everyone who doesn't get a relevant piece of music, or does get one they don't like, fails to see it as a message. Dr. Matax says.
That's one possibility, sure.
Dr. Watana.
You've got another you like better?
Dr. Matax says.
Yeah. I've got another explanation for why these ghosts are only passing on messages of peace and hope, and I definitely like it better.
Song concludes, radio host.
That was The Sticks, by Mother Mother. You're listening to another non-stop music mix on 96.5, The Vibe.
Song begins. Dr. Mataxas laughs. Dr. Mataxas.
Dad.
Dr. Watana.
You know this one?
Dr. Mataxas.
You don't? It was one of his favorites. Journey, 1981.
Song continues, Dr. Mataxas.
Don't stop believing.
Wow. Wow. So it certainly did not deliver. That was really disappointing. my hope and slight nervous fear the author had one-upped me the whole time, and I was about to just fall for it. Turns out that's not true. Um, so, so basically, by the end of it, the conclusive evidence, the argument for this being definitively conclusive, is that it happened to this person. So once it showed up on their own doorstep, suddenly, apparently, it was more believable than all the other testimonies. When in truth, this is simply another testimony. I do think it's interesting that the author decided to end it on this note, which is the final spectrometry results are pending, when they could have said, "Oh, the final spectrometry results are positive," and we would have gotten the frustration alleviated, at the very last moment. And I think I would have respected that, despite being so bothered, because it's sort of like it actually is pretty cleverly subversive and provocateurish, but um, you would have to introduce a problem, and it's the one that I mentioned up here that it really isn't addressed and isn't really resolved, which is why make an entire article about something that's pending? Why give it the secondary class ether when you have the whole time the means by which to make something more definitive and an objective and measurable and scientific and or pseudo parascientific, whatever, and quantifiable way, and then make a whole article about the dilation of the time between the initial idea, which once again is basically taken on faith, apparently due to the prestige and cult of brand worship of Dr. Harry Blank, and really make it an asymptote where you actually don't get anywhere. You don't get anywhere at all. I feel like this whole article was an asymptote. We started very, very close to that asymptotic line at the very beginning, and we actually didn't travel very far at all. So this is an interesting piece. I mean, obviously, we could have read something that was a lot less talented. I think the dialogue here is passable. There are some real cheesy lines in here, like the line about the boss voice. That would fit right in on a romantic comedy or sitcom, something of that sort. But on the whole, I think the dialogue is actually much much better than what I typically would expect from Site 43. Um, but once again, on the whole, this is a very very sleepy anomaly. It's a very very sleepy article and progression, and the best part of the article was either the picture or the very first few sentences of the description, and it never really got off the ground, in my opinion. So that's a shame. I really like it when I read articles that I like more than articles that I read that I don't like. And just for example, if I like an article, I will send the author this recording and say, "Hey, check it out." But if I don't like an article, I won't. So I like sending people stuff because it obviously raises awareness, and that's a marketing opportunity that I can have for this. And so it really is a bummer for me. It doesn't benefit me at all to come away with a negative rating for an article like this. I'd rather it be good, and I'd rather connect with the author, but I absolutely cannot. I mean, obviously, the first article we saw today, which was 6437, of course, is not making the cut. And this one didn't either, and I would say almost equally, but it just did so in a less honest fashion, and it took a tremendous amount of time to get to that realization. So let's see what the comments have to say. And the author is exactly who I thought it would be. Unfortunately, who I was worried that it would be. And I cannot imagine writing an entire article with myself a as a self insert, in the way that this individual does, putting myself at such an elevated position. That is very Neo Lowell Foundation. That's Those are the sort of things that I wish people would um, sort of wake up to and realize that they're, I just wish that this would be a moment where they would pause and think about the existential ramifications of the decisions that they're making. This is a 45-year-old man doing this basically self-flattery, self-congratulations, um, cult of brand advertisement, attempts to advertise himself. He's really a compositional malfeasant, in my opinion, in this way. So, you know, Harry Blank's style is to throw some comedy in there, which we saw. But I would just sum that up by saying that, good comedians make you laugh and bad comedians make you nod and clap. And so I think that basically says it all. Yeah. So this is the exact sort of composition and prose we might expect from someone who is very proud of themselves for typing 115 Guam and who has a PhD. Basically, thinking that their pseudo academic, their pseudo assumption of academia means that their shit doesn't stink, and they can write something like this and it be better than someone else's whose writing doesn't achieve anything either. So let's see what the author has to say about themselves. Again, more about themselves. Dr. Blank's story is Dr. Blank's story. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine referring to your own self-insert in a third-person way in a comment outside of the whole composition? God, man, this is convoluted as shit. This is diagnostic, in my opinion. Speaking of psychology and parapsychology, Dr. Blank's story is, as is common with Dr. Blank's stories, help me, essentially unaltered from reality. The rest turned into an exercise in character voice writing? Really? That was the one thing that I wrote down. The one thing that I wrote down on my notes was that the characterization of this was incredibly weak. I got the distinct feeling when reading this that there was absolutely no variability in the characterization of the voices. They all sounded the same. They all had the same pseudo academic demeanor and posture. There was nothing that made me feel like there was a certain sort of oddity or idiosyncratic characteristic coming through any of the dialogue. In fact, all the testimonies, in my opinion, could have been written by the exact same character. The only thing that differed was who they were a chair of, what department they were the director of. And also a chance to foist old person music on you, I guess. So that's exactly what I said was happening. And it's telling that he sort of hand waves it and throws it to the end of this sentence as a phrase and tries to euphemize it with the phrase, I guess. Thank you to Grigori Karpin and placeholder McD. I think you had very, very poor taste in your critics. I think that showed up in the actual article and its quality. Don't blame ether on me. I stole it from the Polish. I actually thought that was one of the cooler parts about the article. Although, once again, I certainly hope that this doesn't become a trend, and shame on Harry Blank for perpetuating it. Oh, and yeah, one of the jokes in here is like a sideways step from a joke in our Bathrooms Wiki collab. Totally unintentional, but it lets me plug our Bathrooms Wiki collab so it stays. The amount of self pride, the amount of patting yourself on the back and feeling good about yourself, and the deep, desperate need to advertise all of your different works, especially the most recent ones that you want to do well and have more upvotes. It's just sad to see. It's sad to see. This should be someone whose emotional and intellectual maturity matches that of their age, but unfortunately, it's not. And I'm kind of calling the kettle black here because I'm older. I'm 35. Um, but I would, like I said, I can't imagine the juvenility required to do things like what I'm seeing in this 45-year-old man's compositional decisions and comment here. It's almost as though he's once again trying so hard to convince us that the Bathrooms Wiki collab was not, a mean-spirited thing to do. Okay, and so then we've got a bunch of praise here, including one from T. Rutherford, who is an author I really respect. So just agree to disagree on matters of taste here. Although I don't think that you can call the lack of good pacing and the lack of any escalation. Um, I don't think you can really debate the sleepiness of this. Let's see what T. Rutherford has to say. Jack Waltz thinks this is phenomenal, and it just brings to mind that Neo-Law Foundation and Site 42, but Neo-Law Foundation on the whole, um, they seem to have amassed an audience that is addicted to mediocrity. I guess you got to give it to them, including Harry Blank, because they're supremely talented at taking better ideas, decent ideas, and pulling them and taking away anything of interest or anything challenging about it, and really filing it down for their audiences that don't really have the framework to understand why it is that Harry Blank is in a far lower creative tier than his less commercially successful peers. But let's see what T. Rutherford has to say, who, once again, I respect very highly. Strong, easily understood core anomaly. What? No, that's the whole point of the article, is that it's not an easily understood core anomaly. I have to disagree with you there. With that perfect kind of real-world creepy coincidence vibe. That's a very, very kind way to put the fact that this is based on subjective, um, beyond the grave, medium type stuff. The logs are powerful, personal, and don't overstay their welcome individually. However, I got a bit of reader's fatigue after the fourth or fifth entry, and the amount of cross-links became distracting from the central story you were telling here. I 100% agree. Once again, this goes back to the diagnostic psychology of the author, who just cannot resist, uh, as we see here, an expansive network of shills. I kept looking for your protagonist, and they kept vanishing into the afterlog commentary. Okay, good. The brief moments of comedy were also refreshing. Um, golf clap comedy. But again, there were a few too many, and both the sincerity and the comedy started falling off. Overall, I really liked this, but it fell into my common problem with your excellently written works. I have trouble staying invested in these long pieces when there isn't a constant through line plot tugging me along from one moment to the next. It stinks because I really enjoy your writing, and I can't fit my smooth brain into this square hole. I would challenge that just a little bit. T. Rutherford is being incredibly diplomatic. He actually says a lot of the things that I say about the piece that I think it fails from. I don't think I'd downvote this because it's good writing, and once again, that's really where the good parts about this end. The writing is technically competent. It's actually technically above average. It's excellently written. I agree with that. But it's like having a Ferrari and just going 5 miles an hour with it, or using it as a shelf to store boxes on. I mean, it's incredibly sleepy for what you are working with here. Um, but yeah, I would say less that it's a matter of fitting your smooth brain into a square hole, and more of trying to find a way while you're reading the article desperately to keep your own brain from unfolding in real time as it gets numb. Because yeah, this is totally true. There's no reason at all why we had so many of these testimonies. They did nothing to progress the story, the anomaly. This individual, Kydra, thinks that Dr. Blank is a master of character personality. When once again, you could you could interchange any one of those testimonies for any other character, in my opinion, and no one would know the difference. Even just in a single paragraph of monologue, and the jokes were wonderful. I'll give you a concrete example. We had two testimonies that really harped on the fuck on the f words. Were those two different voices? Really? Not really. No, they were the same voice. It's almost like a one-trick pony where you vary it just by throwing in a bunch of fucks, and that happened twice. The whole article is a joyride, but you can't force your old people music on me, even with this nice try, though. Yeah, this is Harry Blank trying to add to his collection of hats on the wiki. Music critic. I actually think his music criticism, his music commentary, was the best part of his writing. Actually, okay, so this is a downvote. I don't think I'd go so far as to give this a downvote because, like I said, it's clearly a passable article. You when you get to the stratosphere of things like what I'm talking about, you get real nitpicky. But don't let that lose sight. I think of the fact that this is a well written article, and there's really no reason to delete it. What do you benefit by deleting it? Honestly, I think that it's fine. But this individual says, "This is my opinion and not the objective truth." You don't need to preface that. We all know that. Um, let's see what this person has to say. This is like an essay. Um, yeah, this is a really, really great point. When I see ether, I think that it's a pointless anomaly. In fact, it's not an anomaly, I would say. Like, is every single urban legend in the world an Ether class anomaly, right? So if we go with the thresholds and criteria established by this article, not necessarily that Ether is this way or bad, but if we go by the premise that this article sets forth, basically anything that anybody thinks might be an anomaly is worthy of documentation. So that's the problem. That's the only reason I would downvote this too. But I think that it's just so well written that it neutralizes the downvote for that reason. I don't think many other authors could pull this off and it not be a downvote. So that's a testament to Harry Blank. I've always thought that he's a very intelligent, very above average when it comes to sentence construction and the technicality of his prose. But it's just like, again, it's like a supercar that is pulled by a horse. Um, right, right. Oh, did the music stop? I guess that's a good indication that we should too. Um, the jokes. I think the timing of the jokes of the article is very bad. Yeah, it's almost like they come in to fill someone's missed line. That's kind of the vibe that it gives, where it's like, okay, we're getting kind of desperate here. Let's just throw out a joke that we've pre-prepared here. I just read about someone losing a loved one or going through depression, and then I immediately stumbled upon a random reference in a comment section to a Tiamat article or a comment about the song played or a joke about the doctor talking about their loss. The jokes themselves aren't bad. I disagree. Just the way that they are used felt very weird to me because the general tone was meant to be, as far as I understand, sad but hopeful. But the jokes just kept messing with the feelings that were supposed to appear in my head. So this is once again sort of the habitual posture of the Neo Law Foundation author, which Harry Blank is certainly one of the paragons of that new style, where you just can't help it. You have to. It's almost like a nervous twitch. You almost get restless when you don't try to be funny in as futile of a way as we see can happen from time to time. Um, yeah. After the first report, I got the idea of the whole thing, and it just dragged on for a very long time. So I haven't read a lot of Harry Blank stuff, but this has made me question um, how far along Harry Blank is. I mean, because I know he writes a lot. He's been on the wiki for about a year. I think he's sort of like a quantity over quality sort of writer, where he spits them out auto fire. Certainly not the way I do things. I think this really has a cobbled together feel of it. I think this comment is very accurate and important because it has a real cobbled together feel, almost like the author didn't spend enough time with it and felt as though getting it out, whether by just being excited uh, or just feeling as though the goal is to put out as many articles as you can, which is a bad thing to aim for, in my opinion. Uh, I agree. I think this article structurally has a severe lack of polish. I think it just barely is a no vote for me. Not that anyone cares. After the first report, I got the idea of the whole thing, and it just dragged on for a very long time. The characters also just made huge stretches to make the anomaly seem real at all, which felt confusing to me. That combined with the joke breaks and the bunch of references that this person understands, but most people don't, led to my downvote. I think that's a perfectly reasonable response to this article. And maybe I'm being a little too nice by just no voting, in my opinion. But I think the main takeaway of this is you can have all the technique and skill and construction and sentence composition in the world, and it still be incredibly dull and uninteresting. And I think another thing to notice at about 39 or 40 in about a day's time is that we have a, a metastasis, a problem on the wiki, I think, where um, playing into someone like Harry Blank or Neo Law Foundation, Site 43 on the whole, playing into their hand. Once again, we have a people who can't distinguish how this article is incredibly mediocre. Whereas when we looked at an article, I think it was 2 days ago, that had a much lower rating at a day's time and was far superior in almost every way to this article. So hopefully that's something that people get out of watching this. Um, yeah. So this has been fun. This has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would, at about 2 hours for two articles. Of course, the vast majority of that being this article, which ended up being quite a disappointment, but I am happy to do this nonetheless. Shows are better when the articles are, so I am rooting for the authors of the SCP Wiki. Join us again tomorrow. We will take a look at the SCPs that were posted today. In fact, if we want to take a peek, no articles were posted to the wiki today. We still got some time, so we'll see. Oh, there's one. Okay, so we'll see how that one shakes out. And then we also have a J to look forward to as well. So, all right, well, join me tomorrow. This has been Lack of Lepers, the busiest man in containment fiction, and also known as SCPCRNP back in the day. And join me every night to stay abridged with the massive amount of content that comes out of the SCP Wiki. To read is to become a better writer. Thanks for joining. See you next time.